Here we have a speech given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in, what did we say, 1965, right? 1965, that's what it just said. 1965. Let's see if I can find this. Yes, it is. Okay. And in it, it says, it talks about the temple. It talks about the temple. Now, there are three temples that were built. There were three. Up to now, there's been three. What are they? One is the tabernacle in the desert. The other one is, here we go. Is this right? Yeah, that's right. 65. One was the tabernacle in the desert. And that tabernacle came with the Jews into Egypt and into Israel. And it was built in Israel also in different forms, in four different places. And until the first temple was built. The first temple was built 440 years after the Jews entered the land of Israel. So the tabernacle was, for all purposes, that was like the first temple, the first, we want to call it the prototype of the temple. And then we had the temple that King Solomon built. And then there was the temple which was built in the time of Ezra, the second temple. And we're waiting for Moshiach to come and build the third temple. Okay, so essentially there was really only two temples up to now. The one that King Solomon built and the one that was built afterwards, what is it, almost 500 years later, by Ezra, in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, that was built. That was the second temple. Okay. But what happens here when the Jewish people build the tabernacle, that was in some ways the main one. Why? Because that began, it broke through. It was a breakthrough that there could actually be a physical building in the world where God, the creator of the whole universe, was revealed. Of course, this absolutely makes no sense, but it's true, right? The world is here. You see the world. You see the creator. No, you went to the temple. You went to the tabernacle. You felt the creator. You felt that there's a creator. Of course, the creator is not a creation. It's not limited. You couldn't see some sort of a big star or a fire or something like that. What exactly you felt, I don't know, but everyone felt that they're being created. A happy feeling. You feel you're not here by accident. They felt infinity, infinite reality. In this world, we just feel finite reality. Okay, whatever it is. Okay. What? So how did it go in the desert? How did it go in the desert? The Jewish people got out of Egypt. They got out of Egypt. And 50 days later, they received the Torah. And then they sinned with the golden calf and etc. etc. So it ended up that they only really received the Torah like, 170 days after they left Egypt, 50 days after they left Egypt. And then there was 120 more days that they had to be on Moses until Moses received the second tablet. So it came down on Yom Kippur. It came down on Yom Kippur. God gave the commandment to Moses to build the tabernacle the day after Yom Kippur. And then they started building, they gathered everything all together. And then on the 7 days before the first day of Nisan, and it's almost 1 year after they got out of Egypt, the first day of Nisan, they got out of Egypt on the 15th of Nisan. So almost a year later, 2 weeks short of that, the tabernacle opened up. They gathered up all the things. That's what we just finished learning. They gathered up the gold and the silver, etc. Okay, but really, the fact is, the fact is that the first day of Nisan, that was the day that the tabernacle was open to the public. But it says that 7 days before that, each day Moses would set up the tabernacle and he would take it down. Set it up and take it down. Why? Because he was waiting for God's presence to be revealed there, called the Shekhinah. He was waiting for God's presence. So every day he would set up the tabernacle and he would take it down. Those were called the 8 days of the inauguration. Shmoni Yemei HaMiluim. The last of those, Sheva Yemei HaMiluim, the 7 days of Miluim. And on the 8th day, Vayi B'Yom HaShmini, that was the first day of Nisan. That's when the tabernacle was actually open for business, to bring sacrifices, etc. And that's when the all the heads of the tribes, they brought their sacrifices. They brought the sacrifices to. They were the first ones to actually offer up in the tabernacle. Good. Okay, so the timeline is sort of important over here. The tabernacle was opened up on the first day of Nisan, but 7 days before that, each day was an inauguration day. Moses set up the tabernacle and he took it down until finally the last day, which was the first day of the last of these days, which was the first day of Nisan. That's when the Shekhinah was appeared, and that's when it started offering. Okay, bringing offerings. Here we go. On pasuk, that's what it says in this week's Torah portion. On the pasuk, it says Vayihi b'chodesh harishon. It says it was in the first month, and this is going to tell us a lot in general about the first temple, the second temple, the third temple. What exactly are we waiting for? Now, this is an essential thing in Judaism. This is essential to Judaism. Essential, the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple in Jerusalem is essential. But of course, at first it wasn't in Jerusalem. It traveled around with them, like we said before. So the Holy Temple is essential, is an essence of Judaism. In a way, it's the goal of Judaism, to reveal God in the world exactly according to the Torah. That's the essence of what Judaism is. You can't have Judaism without Jerusalem and the Holy Temple. Can't have it. That's the goal. We don't have the Holy Temple now. So what do we have Judaism? We're waiting for it to be built. It says that it actually is built. It says it's already, the temple is waiting up in heaven to come down. Moshiach is going to bring it down. We'll talk about that. The third temple. But Judaism has to have a temple. It has to have the tablets. It says the tablets are buried down deep. It says that King Solomon made a special place to bury the tablets down deep. Nobody would find them until the third temple. The second temple, they weren't revealed. They weren't revealed. They remained down deep in the hidden chambers, it says that King Solomon made. Okay, so first of all, what the Rebbe wants to get us in our mind that the way the world is now is not the way it's supposed to be. The way the world is now, it's not the way it's supposed to be. Don't get too used to it, because there's going to be massive, massive changes where we're going to see what Jews really are and what the Torah really is and what the commandments really are, what the land of Israel really is. We're going to see it. That's going to be the future. But the whole thing began here, God being revealed in the physical world permanently with the tabernacle. When God gave the Torah on Mount Sinai, it was only temporary, the revelation. The tabernacle was permanent. Okay, we go. On the pasuk it says, "Vayihi b'chodesh harishon." It was in the first month. The first month, that's the month of Nisan. B'shana Sheni, in the second year after they left Egypt. Be'echad l'chodesh, in the first day of the month, the first day of Nisan, hukam mishkan, the tabernacle was set up. That's what it says. That's the day when the tabernacle was open for business. People, Midrash, it says in the Midrash, and it's brought also in Pirush Rashi, that what it says, hukam hamishkan, means that it was set up. This implies that the Jewish people didn't set it up. It was set up. Passive tense. Mashmasha mishkan hukam me'alav. That it was set up. It was stood up by itself. He called Yisrael because all the Jewish people, lo yochlim lehakimu. The Jewish people couldn't lift up the boards, machmas kovid akarushim, because they were too heavy. The boards of the tabernacle were too heavy. Where were the boards? The boards were in the room, the Holy of Holies. Let's have a picture. We have a picture over here. This picture. This comes up automatically now. Here we go. 1 second. Here we go. Tabernacle. Here we go. See? Oh, it's pictures. Here we go. Maybe one of these pictures will be accurate enough. See, that's some really weird ideas here. Here we go. Okay, see, this, no, you can't really see it. This building over here, this is the tabernacle. Let's say this is the tabernacle, right? There were the curtains all around. And then there was a tent, but this tent really wasn't a tent. It's covered over by furs and things like that, but underneath these furs are boards, and they're very, very heavy boards. They were 10 amas high, which is like 15 amas high, and they weighed, each one weighed, I don't know, 1,000 pounds, let's say. It weighed a ton. Each one weighed a ton. So it said, it's a better picture. Anyway, this is sort of basically what it looked like. This is the tent of meeting, see? So there were boards, the boards fell, okay. And so it says these boards were too heavy, and therefore nobody could stand them up. What did God say to Moses? God said to Moses, Moses said, I can't stand these things up. It's everybody help. They couldn't lift them. They were just too heavy. It says, Moses said, Osak biyadcha, you just lift it up with your hand. V'ata mareh la'amido, v'hu omed be'alav. And you'll indicate that you want to lift it up, and it'll stand on its own. And I'll write, God said, I'll write that you were the one that did it. Like it says, who come a Mishkan? Who did it? Moshe. Vayakam Moshe, it says that Moses did it. So we have two apparently contradicting. On one hand, it says that the tabernacle was stood up, and on the other one, it says that Moses, he's the one that did it. So maybe we can say maybe it's not that contradictory. Maybe it was stood up because Moses did it. Right? Says the Midrash, the fact is that these are two contradictory paragraphs, and the explanation is very simple. The tabernacle, the boards of the tabernacle stood up on their own, but Moses put his hand underneath it, and he just showed he wanted to do it, and God did a miracle. That's how it happened on the day that it stood up. Tzorach Lahavin, says the Rebbe, this doesn't make any sense. Why? Because in the same Midrash it says that all the 7 days of the Miluim, the 7 days which preceded the day that the tabernacle was stood up, this began on the 23rd day of Adar, was Moses. It says Moses, he stood up the Mishkan, he stood up these boards, and he took them apart. No one could lift them up. We just finished saying no one could do it. They were too heavy. How could Moses do it every day? I thought so if Moses could do it every day, then why didn't he stand it up on the last day? So there must be something important about when the tabernacle was stood up that made the boards super heavy on the last day. And on the other days, they weren't so heavy. Behold, Hatam, the reason Shamid Moshe, the Moses stood up the Mishkan on the 7 days of inauguration, even though that God commanded him, even though the God commanded him to do it on the first day of Nisan. Why did he start doing it 7 days before every day? Why? It's explained in another place. Rashi says, and also Ramban. Ramban is Rabbi Moses ben Nachman. He lived about 200 years after Rashi. The Ramban writes, the Kodesh Baruch Hu, he said to Moses in the beginning, before the 7 days of the inauguration, right? There were 7 days of inauguration before the first day of Nisan. The first day of Nisan, that's when he actually set it up. But it says the boards were too heavy. They had a miracle. It says, therefore, there were 7 days before that Moses practiced. Hakamos is a Mishkan, Kamishpatam Asher Haresa Bahar, that Moses practiced when God said to him that the thing will be set up permanently on the first day of Nisan. In other words, 7 days later, Hainu Biyom Rishon Tihakamaso, in the Yada, he knew Shebe'et Yamei he knew Ki Be'et Yamei Miluim Yitztarech Lahakam Alorid. He knew that he was going to have to do it. So Moses practiced. But from this, Moshe, the Rashi, in his explanation on the Torah, he does not explain why Moses did it, why Moses stood it up for the 7 days. It doesn't see a simple reason. So it must be that Rashi holds, Shapirush B'yom, that he says on the day, second. Chodesh Rishon, that what God said to Moses, that on the first day of the month of Nisan, that's when it's going to be stood up. who, not that on this day will be standing up, but kepshuto, hakamato b'klu, b'chlal, tiyeh b'yom zeh. He said generally what it means that this is the day that you're going to finish standing it up. In other words, practice Moshe if you want to, but the day that it's going to be finished is going to be on the first day of Nisan. According to this, so this commandment that on the first day of the month you will stand up the commandment. This is not an additional commandment on standing up the tabernacle, like Ramban said, but it's a Gilui Milsa that, according to Rashi, God was just revealing something to Moses. It wasn't a commandment. He was telling Moshe that on the 8th day, 7 days you should practice. On the 8th day, that's going to be the last day. That the commandment will be on the first day of Nisan. So in other words, according to Ramban, God was telling Moshe, stand up the tabernacle on the first day of Nisan. That's the commandment. And Moses just practiced the other days before. According to Rashi, it's not that way. According to Rashi, God was telling Moshe that practice all the other days, and I'm going to tell you that the last day you won't have to practice anymore is going to be the first day of Nisan. That's not the commandment. The commandment is that it's going to be stood up. I'm just letting you know that the last day when you won't have to take it apart anymore is going to be the first day of Nisan. Masha made Moshe, and that which Moses set it up in the Mishkan beforehand, and he wasn't commanded to do this according to Rashi. Ela Shalamadzot, he just learned it from the commandment. Lechanech at Aaron ubanav v'avodasam, that Moses was commanded that he should educate and inaugurate Aaron and his sons. They became the Kohanim, right, to do work. V'hachinuch ba'avodah, and this that Moshe inaugurated Aaron and the rest of the priests to work. There were only two, actually. There was only Aaron and his two sons. It has to be te'aseh avodat b'kivyut. Obviously, he knew that they were going to eventually do the work in the Holy Temple, in the Tabernacle. So therefore, he learned from this commandment that all the 7 days has to be petach ol moed, that he had to inaugurate them. Where did it say God told Moshe to inaugurate and prepare the priests, which were Aaron and his two sons? Where it says that he should do it at the entrance of the tabernacle. So this, he understood that you have to stand up the tabernacle. So according to this, we can understand what the Ramban said, that standing up the Mishkan in the 7 days was just a special commandment, right? It was a practice. So therefore, we can say that Gam also on this was that God gave a special power to Moshe to stand up in the tabernacle. But Gam Zeh, this also was Hukam Me'alav. This also was that Moses just put his hand underneath the boards and they stood up on their own. But according to Rashi, the Rashi says that this standing up of the 7 days of the inauguration wasn't a commandment. That God was just letting him know, Moshe, you should practice for 7 days until I tell you to stop. And when am I going to tell you to stop? On the 8th day. On the 8th day, that's going to be the first day of Nisan. That's when to stand up. That's when the tabernacle is going to be finished. So if so, where did Moshe have the power to stand up all of the 7 days of the Miluim? Okay, so we have a question. What's the question? And the boards of the tabernacle that I showed you were tremendously heavy. No one could lift them up. How were they lifted up? So it said they were lifted up above the big miracle that Moshe tried to lift them up and he couldn't. He got the Jewish people together. They couldn't do it together. So God said, Moshe, listen, you just put your hand underneath it and lift up by himself. When did that miracle happen? It happened on the first day of Nisan, the 8th day of preparation for the building. 8th day of building. Says, according to Rashi got a big problem. What's the big problem? Everybody knows that Moshe stood up the tabernacle 7 days, and then he took it down until finally came the 8th day. And God was telling Moshe, you can practice if you want to, but I'm telling you the last day is going to be the final day. It wasn't a commandment. Moshe was just doing it on his own. According to the Ramban, God commanded Moshe 7 days to stand up the tabernacle and to take it down. If so, we can understand it. It's a commandment of God. So God helped him to lift up the boards. But according to Rashi, that it was almost optional, that Moses didn't have to do the 7 days. It was just 7 days of practice. So how did he have the power to lift up the boards for these 7 days? God didn't help him. And if he did have the power to lift them up for the 7 days, then why didn't he have the power to do it on the 8th day? The explanation is like this. The uniqueness of the first day of Nisan, that's we said is the 8th day of the preparation for the inauguration of the tabernacle. It says, Kavod Hashem Malayat Mishkan. On this day, God's presence was revealed in the tabernacle. Hashard bo Shechina, the Shechina was revealed, which is not the case the 7 days before that. Then God's presence was not revealed. According to the opinion of Rashi, now we can understand simply why the Shekhinah was not revealed in the 6 days, in the 7th days, the 7 previous days, preparation days, even though it says, it says clearly God said, make me a tabernacle and I'll dwell in it. God said that the revelation of godliness depends only on doing the tabernacle. Make a mikdash. Why? Because the Mishkan that Moses made in the 7 days, this was just education. This was just a part of, how do you say, of inaugurating Aaron and his 2 sons, and Moshe was practicing standing up the Mishkan. But this was not a detail in the actual standing up of the Mishkan. This was not the commandment. So if so, the 7 days, God's presence wasn't there. Somehow or other, we're going to see that this made the boards lighter. They weren't just heavy. Moshe didn't need God's help to stand them up. Also, opinion, we're going to see this means that God's presence actually was revealed and it had physical effect. We'll see in a moment. That according to the Ramban, that Moses was commanded to do the 7 days. This was because Amar, he said in the beginning, stand at the Mishkan, simply that I showed you in the mountain. Hari, Mefarish she'ulai haya kain lahargil, maybe it was just in order to accustom the Levites in their details. True, it was a commandment to do it all 7 days, but maybe it was just to get the Levites accustomed. The Levites, they would sing, they would open up the gates, etc. It was just educating the Levites. Or maybe it was in order just to prepare the big day, the 8th day, with a special crown. It says when it was set up permanently. So if so, we see that the difference between the Mishkan and the 7 days of the inauguration, according to the Ramban, there was a commandment, to the Mishkan that was on the 8th day is, like we said, the difference between the Mishkan that was temporary and the holy temple, that was permanent, that God was revealed. Therefore, the Shekhinah was not there until the 8th day. So God's presence was not revealed until the 8th day. Now, what is this idea of God's presence being revealed? What was it? Okay, big time, when God's presence was really revealed for the first time, this was in Gan Eden by Adam. God's presence was revealed to Adam, and as soon as the Adam sinned, whatever, God's presence went away. When God gave the Torah, it was revealed again, but even in a bigger way. God's presence was actually revealed on Mount Sinai. Now, what does this mean? when God's presence was revealed, it says that the people never dreamed that there would be such a thing like that. It was a level of reality that was completely it was, how do you say, incompatible with their reality. It was reality that was so intensely real. The Creator was revealed that they couldn't take it. That's called the Shekhinah. That's called the Shekhinah. God wanted that this reality should be revealed in a way that it was somehow possible to receive. Therefore, he made the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies, what was in the Holy of Holies? The tablets. The same revelation that was on Mount Sinai was in the Holy of Holies. Therefore, no one could go in, only the high priest and only on Yom Kippur. But nevertheless, the fact is it was revealed. And because it was revealed, that made a totally different level of reality. The Holy Temple was holy, the Tabernacle was holy, it was a commandment, but it didn't have God's presence there. When did it have God's presence revealed there? Only on the 8th day. Oh, so here we see a difference, a little bit of a difference between holiness and God revealing it, being revealed there, and God not being revealed. And that, of course, is the essence of Judaism, is God and revealing God, according to the Torah. Eventually will be the Holy Temple, and this is going to lead to the 3rd temple, which Moshiach is going to build, and we're going to understand much more about that tomorrow.